Kank.
Kank.
Could have some gimmicks there. Kank. What's going on?
Cats.
That cat knows everybody. And I'm joined by the proverbial hip by my best bud and Master Chief of Comics, Mike Manley. Say hi, Mike.
Hello, every lady in germ.
Mike, I'm feeling that shirt, bro.
Oh, thanks. I got this. I won't say where I got it.
Yeah,
because it's probably listening.
Yeah. Your phone is definitely listening. Yeah,
it's listening, and then all of a sudden later tonight it'll be like, he said he liked shirts, and there'll be nothing but shirts.
Yeah. You've been having some problems with that on the social every time you say something.
I swear, if I say I like something, or I was talking to somebody, or having a couple conversations with various people over the last week about depression, because a lot of people suffer depression because of the isolation and the ongoing situation. All of a sudden in my Facebook feed, there's all these things about depression.
Wow.
So it has to either be reading my keystrokes or it's listening. Depression.
Hey.
Then all down the line, each droid tells the other droid, depression. Now I get all these things about depression. So I think you have to be careful about what you say, because
the streets is watching. Your phone is watching.
Your phone is listening. Your Alexa or Alexandria or whatever the hell that thing is.
You know what? For some reason, they sent me something and I won't install it. I don't know. I know some people have smart houses and they love it. They get to go into the studio and go computer on, and everything turns like that's amazing.
Yeah. I'm like Magnus Robot Fighter. I don't believe in letting the robots control everything. We're already really close to Skynet. The military is doing stuff now that is gonna come with me if you want to live.
Mike, can we draw a Manley Robot Fighter and have you in that skirt? Chopping a robot's head off.
Chopping something and not trying to flash kids while I'm doing it.
I love it. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. If you're a fan of the show, you know about the John. You see the John above my head. Our good buddies at Graphicsly who make Clip Studio Paint. Yes, that Clip Studio Paint. Not the Wish.com Clip Studio Paint.
Because I was using Paint Studio Clip.
Yeah, that's the wrong one. This is the legit real one. Go over, check them out at graphicsly.com. They always have a sale going on. And also our buddy John Morrow, who is the publisher of Mike's Draw magazine, celebrating its. How long have we been doing this, Mike? 20 years? How long has Draw been around?
20 years now. 20, as well as like the Kirby collector and comic book artist and
rough stuff.
A whole bunch of stuff. And John always has a sale. And in fact, we're probably getting down to the last few actual physical copies of Draw. And then there will be no more until I put out another issue. But they will all be available digital. And John always has a deal if you want to buy a bunch of them. I think you can get the whole digital bundle for a really good price. Then you can print them out and bind them, and then you'll have them in print.
You can bind them. All right, cool. So I'm going to take these guys off here. Hold on a second. I got too many things going on. I'm going to take these off, and then I'm going to add this, Mike. Maybe you could talk about that. What's that about, Mike?
Well, I was approached by TeePublic back over the summer from my Instagram post of what I called my wind down drawings, the drawings I do in the evening after I've been doing actually these things for years now. I realized the other day I've been doing them in some cases 10 years. Some of them are pretty old, but they liked them and they approached me to be one of their featured people on their website, TeePublic, where you can get T-shirts and mugs and all kinds of merch,
Yeah.
So I just opened up my store last Friday. It went live.
Yeah, like Skynet, it went live.
Yeah, so that's the banner of the two little. I'm calling them the Skull Kids. I don't know if that will be the final name, but I call them the Skull Kids, and I think they just first I started drawing the girl, the skeleton girl.
Yeah.
And then next there was like this little skeleton boy with the missing arm and the hole in his head, and they just came. I think because I draw on, like being an actor, you have to hit your mark. You've got to do very specific things as a cartoonist.
Mm-hmm.
In the evening, I just like to let my imagination just go, and I will just draw literally anything or just weird stuff. Whatever comes out of my head, I just draw. And these little characters just came out, and I really like drawing them. And so I've done probably about 50 drawings of them, I think now.
Yeah.
So most of them are available as, like I said, as T-shirts. You can also get coffee mugs and phone cases and notebooks, and there's no lunchbox yet. But although they would probably make a pretty cool lunchbox, I don't think that kids use lunchboxes anymore.
No, I think they digitally upload their lunch.
But yeah, so people have been very positive and responsive to my drawings that I do on my own. Actually, more than anything else that I've done, even more than my regular work. So if you want to support my independent projects, I'd appreciate you going to TeePublic. In fact, I think a bunch of stuff is on sale right now. So
yeah, our buddy Joel Carroll is a fantastic cartoonist. Says TeePublic is great.
Yeah, I think that I actually had my agent, because when they first approached me, I was like, yeah, right. This is probably someplace in China or Mexico or someplace. It's going to just take my ideas and make 1 million T-shirts and, not give me anything. But they actually give the highest percentage to creative people for the sale. So
right, and you know what? I shop there. I have a bunch of gimmick shirts that I buy from there. There's a question from our buddy JRD. Sorry for that echo. I got to try to work that out. Who says, Mike, do you white pen those stars or just fill in blacks around them? Speaking about this,
in that case, I did both. Some of them I drew, and then in Photoshop, I added some more or kind of cleaned them up a little bit, just because I didn't feel like getting my white out. And because a lot of times when you get white out on there, you think it's dry, then you put it on the scanner, and then later on, like, damn it, I got some. You got specs. You got the specs or the
You get white out arm.
And I have to this day, and I've been doing this a long time, I have never found the perfect whiteout. Every whiteout, like, you get the pens and like, oh, that's good, and you open it up and you use it once, and the next time it's like it's dead. It won't work as well as you use the first time. If you use like I used to use this like Pro White.
Oh yeah, the Pro White. Yeah.
As soon as you open it up, it's like a rock. Well, so you have to like add a little distilled water to it, because if you add regular water, it'll get funky.
Well, the deleter, the manga brand.
I had that. I had that, but I didn't.
You didn't love it.
It wasn't dense enough. I had to go over and over and over and over and over.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody said that I wasn't dense enough.
Oh.
All right. Enough of that. All right. Well, but yeah, check out Mike's new merch shop. I want to make sure that Mike is flush with orders, and they do really good work. Like, I have a lot of TeePublic shirts, and they're great. I throw them in the wash, make sure you get them camera ready, and then you're good to go.
And if you have a problem, they're really good. I hear their customer service is good at like, something's wrong with my shirt or the wrong size. They're really good about that, because a lot of places, like, I've ordered shirts from things on Facebook.
Yeah.
and you order the 3X, but I think it was the 3X in Pygmyland or something. So when you get it, it's like, that's not 3X, because you always know to order. If you're not a size 0, you have to order the biggest, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get it, it's like, they go, yeah, that's size 3X. Yeah, what? Maybe for my Fison doll, it's a 3X, but not for a big guy like me.
That's right. But yeah, it's always a good idea to order up. So we're going to get started, but I want to give some housekeeping for the podcast. If this is your first time joining us, well, hello. That's our official greeting. If you're watching us on Facebook, if you're viewing this on YouTube, that's fantastic. You're here live. You can be a part of the show. So if you can reply in the comments, get in the chat. Let us know that you're here. And if you have something to say, I may put it on the screen. I want to bring in our guest right now. Has been patiently waiting in the green room.
Shut up already and bring me in.
I think we're almost out of Chex Mix, so we better bring him in.
He's eating the furniture.
Tonight, you guys were in for a treat. We have a fantastic cartoonist, Mike Maihak, who's going to be on our show. Oh, and Mike is that the first volume of Cleopatra in Space?
That's the first volume.
Look at that! I love it.
I just ordered this from from Rocket Man.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's fantastic. And we're going to talk to Mike about his career as a career cartoonist, where he started, as his origin story, as we like to call it, where he's come and where he's going. I know a lot of people who are probably Cleopatra fans who can't wait to talk to him. And I'm sure there's lots of questions, even from the creative side, about having a graphic novel series and then transforming that into animation. I'm sure there's a million questions just about that whole process. So let's get started. Bring him in. Hold on, I gotta get it ready. He's not ready. Are you ready? I'm not ready. All right, let's bring in Mike Maihak.
Cha-ching, cha-ching. He's being rendered right now. He's being rendered.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's like the 3D print.
Yeah, it's Tron.
How are you, bro? Good.
How you guys doing?
Great, thanks, man. We appreciate you coming on. I want to start out by saying you have a fantastic studio.
Oh, yeah. I guess you can only just see one aspect of it. I can kind of tilt my computer.
Yeah, look at that.
A little bit.
I like the floating shelves back there.
Yeah, bookshelves.
Yeah.
It only goes up so high there.
So
those are barn doors.
Tell us about the plant.
Plant. What was? Oh, that? Oh, up there on that shelf? Yeah, that's a fake plant.
That's for reference. He has to draw a plant.
I just like having plants, but I always kill them. They always die on me. Because I don't have them in sunny spots and I don't water them enough. But I like to look at them. So that one's a fake one, so I don't have to worry about water. I do have, let's see if I can see this. If I can turn, I have that bamboo. I've kept that thing alive for about 2 years now. So I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, I think bamboo is easier.
Yeah, that's easy. And I have a cactus sitting over there on my desk that I just got. And I'm hoping I can keep a cactus alive. But I don't know if it'll happen or not.
Oh, Jamar just...
You lost Jamar.
Yeah, just...
Too much. Yeah. He was like, I don't want to talk about plants. This is boring. Let's just get out of here.
So, how's it been the last, say, year or so or 2 years with the creative process? Are you used to working alone, and so there was not much of a difference from before? Because it's funny, I've talked to people who work in animation and they're working at home, and it was a big difference.
No, my process hasn't changed. Oh, there he's back. No, we're not talking about plants anymore. You're good.
All right. Sorry about that. Continue.
We moved on.
Okay.
I've my process hasn't changed at all, because I've always been working. I've been working out of my own studio for oh geez, probably since like 2013, 2012, around that, how many ever years, so almost 10 years.
Mhm.
The only thing that's really changed is my wife works at home now. It used to be just me. And so now she works downstairs, and she's working full-time from home because her work just said, you're all going to work from home from now on. So the biggest difference is my cats would just always precisely meow at me, and I don't want to say bug because that sounds like I don't like my cats, but they would just hop all over they would bug me. They would just try to get on top of the computer or the drawing desk, and it was great. And then now that she's downstairs, they don't do that anymore.
Oh.
So I don't have that company like I used to have.
Yeah.
At first I thought, well, this is nice. I'm able to get my work done. I have all these distractions, and now I kind of miss having the company sometimes. So. But yeah, the biggest difference is that, and other than that, just my work. I've just been working along, just doing everything I've always been doing. So it hasn't really affected me, at least in that at least that part of it.
Right, and it's funny, and I'm just going to guess at what you guys are talking about, but I know a lot of people have been affected from the at home, but I think cartoonists were able to, I don't know, maybe navigate a better part of this.
Adapted better than others.
Yeah.
It is. I always say it's sort of like being the Maytag repairman, because you're used to working by yourself. Although over the years I have had roommates and friends, and both of my brothers have stayed with me off and on, girlfriends, stuff like that. But yeah, I think a cartoonist is used to working alone, and you're used to working out of your head. And like I said, I was talking to a friend of mine who's an animator, and she was talking about how, like, wow, it's really different. Like, this is going on a long time. They're not in the studio anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And animation is like a team.
Yeah.
It's a team sport.
You want to play off of each other, and yeah.
I mean, and in your case, when you're doing the graphic novels, that's not a team sport, right? It's just you, right? At least to a certain point, right?
Well, yeah, I have an editor, and I have I have like a circle of friends, that I'll bounce ideas off of, and so forth. But yeah, for the most part, it's just it's me and my head and my cats, and that's it. Just kind of picking up ideas. I read this article. It was probably last year when we were in the thick of things too, about how like Generation X, which is my generation, we coped easier than some other generations as well, because we were the stay-at-home sort of generation. We were the ones that would, like, your parents were off at work, and you come home and they weren't there, and you just go off. There was no really sort of supervision. And so we just got used to fending for ourselves, and it was, so we were able to, adapt pretty easy that way too. But
I was a generation before that. Yeah, I was a generation before that where you would go out and you would literally be gone all day. You might check in for lunch or whatever, but like, they didn't want you to be outside all the time. They didn't want you to be inside all the time. Although I like to stay in and draw, watch TV and draw was like a normal thing. Now if you put your kid outside all day, they'd come and arrest you.
And even as a parent, I freak out if I was like, I gotta know where they are. I gotta be able to see them from my window and stuff like that. And I have to try not to be so, too much like that, And I'm not as, I'm a little bit more easygoing when it comes to that, because I want them to have that freedom. I don't want to feel like they're being watched their whole life.
Go on, honey. I'm not watching you, but I'm watching you.
Yeah. We're gonna have the trackers. Yeah, I can't wait to, once my oldest is old enough to have a cell phone, I'm like, I'm gonna know exactly where you are all the time.
Well, isn't that 3 now? Aren't you, by the time you're 3, you're old enough to have a cell phone?
3, yeah, it's that way.
So do you? I was going to say, do you, because you're at home or when the family's at home? I'm always interested in how cartoonists have to block their day, because cartooning is a long I mean, no cartoonist works 5 hours a day unless, I don't know, maybe the guy who does mutts because he could draw those things real quick. You know what I mean? But I mean, if you're doing a book that has multiple characters and environments, and I mean, most cartoonists I know work at least 10 hours a day.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's days that are longer and there's days that are shorter. I tend to give myself like a page quota, depending on what part of the process of the graphic novel I'm working on. Right now, I'm in a layout stage, and my layouts are basically these really kind of rough pencils. And I tell myself I have to get 3 pages of layouts done a day, and that's kind of my goal. Yeah. And that can take me anywhere from, like you said, 5 hours to 10 hours, or sometimes I just can't get it done, and I just sort of go, it's better for me just to stop and come back to it another day or the next day. And usually that's the best decision too, is just to stop. If it's not working, usually it's just kind of good to walk away sometimes. But that's usually how I block it. I usually try to block it in terms of that amount of work, what I have to get done each day, more than I have to spend this much time working each day. And if I have any extra time left over, that's great. Then I can do a little bit of kind of, fun. I don't want to say, the graphic novel is fun too, but I can do other things that I also want to draw, either doing like some sort of fan art or some other comic or some other freelance thing or commission that I have on my plate. Or I just, go and hang out with the family or play Zelda. That's pretty much, that's all my, I find Zelda, I've been playing Breath of the Wild all year, ever since January. That's been my thing. I find it the most therapeutic game I've ever played in my entire, it's like, I'm nothing else is in my, it's probably not even the best thing, because there could be like a fire, my kid throwing lamps around and stuff, but I'll be like battling a guardian or just kind of exploring one of the shrines. And not even know, because I'm so lost in that world. That's been nice.
Well, you know what I think is interesting about this, and we talk a lot about generational shifts with cartoonists, is that, Mike, like we're kind of Mike, there's both of your mics, like Maihak, and I share a lot of the whole video game thing. And I know Mike didn't really come up in the same way we did, where Mike, so if you and say your buddies at Marvel needed to blow off some steam, what would you be turning to?
Well, actually, there was a time in the 90s, I would say, when Sega and the first PlayStation were coming out, where I did. Yeah. And we would, the first Grand Theft, we would sit there, or NBA Jam, and you'd play until like your thumb was like just a worthless stump, But I found that as I went along and my career became even busier, and then probably going back to school, and then, then I started adding teaching, and I added the magazine, and I added all these other things that when I had my downtime, I wanted to go do a landscape painting, or I wanted to go do something else. I didn't want to sit down and do a video game, because this is just me. Yeah. When I was done with, if I went and relaxed and did a landscape painting, I have a painting, and I would challenge myself as an artist in a completely different way than my cartooning, right? And I see these video games, and back when I used to actually go into stores, I would stand there and I would look at whatever the new game was, like the one with the Colossus, and what they were awesome. I just saw like the New York Times last year reviewed one of the new Star Wars games, and it's like, wow, that I could go buy one, tomorrow, but I don't have 15 extra hours in a week to play any of these games. That's literally what it comes down to. If I'm going to take 15 hours, I would rather take that 15 hours and do some of the Skull Kids drawing, or work on another comic, or do something. Because so it's literally a time. If I was a teenager, because I have some younger friends, and they were complaining, man, I used to be able to play video games, but you find as you start getting into your 20s, your time starts to how you break up your time as a creative person shifts. And I know people that work in studios go and work 10, 12 hours a day, live in LA, they come home, your brain is shot. So you probably don't want to go do anything else. You know, did you find that to be the case? Like at your age now, how you split your time is different than it was 10 years ago? I mean, I know you have a family, so I'm assuming maybe 10 years ago you didn't have a family.
I've always been pretty driven and productive. Like I've always kind of set my mind on something and kind of went for it. And I've always wanted to work in comics. So I was always drawing. In fact, when I was younger, when video games were really starting to become, kind of the norm for, I think, most kids my age, we always had like sort of the secondhand generation. I think we did get a Sega Genesis when that came out, but we had like a hand-me-down to Nintendo. So when everybody else was playing Mario 3, we were playing like the first Mario.
You were playing second Genesis.
Yeah.
Sega Genesis.
Second Genesis.
And so I honestly didn't play that many video games. I was much more interested in reading and drawing and things like that growing up. And I had but I remember always loving Zelda, because Zelda was sort of like the puzzle games. I wasn't into anything that didn't sort of challenge me a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know, intellectually it sounds like
you were not.
Zelda. But like I didn't just want to go around shooting people or battling. I actually wanted to have some sort of something to solve. And
you're too well adjusted. You're too well adjusted.
So that's just sort of what if it wasn't something like that, I didn't really get into it as much. My wife and I, before we really started dating, we were playing GoldenEye, and she would just, she'd obliterate me every time. She's way better at video games than I'll ever be. And I think that's how I fell in love with her. I was like, oh man, this person can just like take me out. So, but yeah, mostly I'm the same way. I look at video games. In fact, I had Zelda. I had Breath of the Wild. I bought it when it first came out. So I thought, I'm going to be playing this.
Right.
And I didn't start playing it until the beginning of this year, because I was busy working on Cleopatra in Space 5 and then Cleopatra in Space 6. My production schedule was so rushed for those books that I just did not have time to go, I can just I'll just go play some video games.
Right.
Because you're right. I want to focus on making sure the books were the best they could be. And if I was dividing that attention, I wouldn't have. I probably would have just kind of taken a lot more shortcuts than I ended up doing.
Well, if I can add to that a little bit, it's also, I think it's important that you protect your relaxation, right? Like, so say, if you can't get to it, then it can wait. But if you feel like you're trying to rush it in, or you're angry that you have to put it down every time, then it's not working anymore.
And I think that's a good for those coming into the comic world and the graphic novel world, especially right now. There's just, publishers are just eating graphic novels up. And so there's a lot of new artists that are coming in that have never done a graphic novel, and have maybe never even done a 20-page comic.
And it's hard. It's hard, isn't it?
Very, very hard. And so they go in and they don't realize what the production is like for doing something like that. And they agree to these terms where we're going to put out a book once a year, and you have 12 months to get this done. And then they're so excited about having the book and having a publisher and having an advance that they don't think about how much time is actually involved in making that book, and especially making the quality of book that they probably want to make. And so my advice is always, when those deals come to you, to really negotiate and give yourself a huge pillow of time, because you just never know what's going to come up. A pandemic could come up. You never know.
And touching on that, why don't we talk a little bit about that? Because you built up to doing that. It's like we often talk on the podcast, because both Jamar and I teach. You have a young artist who they all want to do Dune, right? If they all have this idea to do this magnus opus, and you're like, well, do a 3-page story, and do a 4-page story, and do an 8-page story. So can you speak to that a little bit, like how you built? Because you got to build. It's like a marathon.
Yeah. It's very much like a marathon. And, I've been doing it long enough where I can sort of chunk it out and I can gauge how much time I'm going to spend. In fact, even my newest book, I was looking at how much time I was spending on Cleopatra and thinking how I can economize my work, so I can still kind of, give an even more involved book to people, but not take as much time working on it. And so I'm just trying different artistic approaches and seeing what's important and things like that. But, I came from, originally I really wanted to do like strip style comics. I grew up with the newspaper funnies. I'm sure there's still people out there who have no idea what a newspaper is anymore. There used to be comics in the newspaper. And that's what I grew up reading. That's what made me want to draw comics. And so I grew up reading Garfield and Calvin Hobbes and Bloom County and things like that. And that's what I sort of did when I was a kid. It was these short little 3-panel or 4-panel. Sometimes I was really into Far Side, so I would try, doing like 1-panel comics. But I was horrible at it. That's really tough to tell one panel. So I already had sort of that background of working on that so long through my childhood that when it came to doing something a little bit more, I just kind of said, well, maybe I'll just do, like you said, maybe I'll just try to do 3 pages here. And when I was in high school, I used to do these little comics, and I would staple them together and pass them out at the cafeteria to my friends and stuff. And they were just like little silly comics with characters that we would all sort of create together at the lunch table. And then we make, they were like, here's your ideas. Now you draw it because you're the artist. So I was the guy that had to draw it. And then we were put them together, and then we would just sort of, share them. We didn't really sell them. We just liked having the fact that we had this thing that we created. And so, from a very early on, I was already used to making these very short kind of comics. And then when the internet really started to come alive and webcomics started to become a thing, that's where I started putting in more of my focus. And I started, and this is where I messed up, is because I started wanting to do something sort of like Dune. I always say like Lord of the Rings, or this magnum opus, Lord of the Rings was actually never finished anyways, so that's the best example. But I started this comic called Seed, and I just had all these ideas and these grand visions of what it could be. But I, was right out of college. I was working a day job. I was only working at night. I was tired when I was working at night. And I can really only get maybe about a page a day or a page a week done, which is no way to tell an epic opus.
Right, yeah. Right.
I'd be like still working on it to this day. It would be ridiculous. So I backtracked and I thought, well, what if I can just tell a comic in just 1 page? What if I can tell a story in just 6 panels? So I started Cow and Buffalo, and that was just these little 6-panel gags with a cow and a buffalo that were sort of roommates, almost conversations I would just have in my head. And I did that for about 6 years, and I told myself I would just do that, just 1 page a week, not stressed out about it, just have fun. But it got to the point where I was able to hammer out those comics like really fast at that point. And so I, just by the process of working on it for so long, I was like, now I think I'm ready to do something a bit longer. And that's when, I guess that's pretty much when I started Cleopatra in Space. That was a long way to get to that. But I think a lot of people, somebody just, this cow and buffalo. I hear that sometimes, like, yeah, I maybe have to get back to cow and buffalo sometime.
That's a faraway look.
It's such a time, a time in my life that I've kind of put behind me, and it's hard to go back. But.
So, well, Mike, let me since we're kind of doing an origin story dance here, when did you start folding yourself into the comic book convention circuit and going to shows and setting up at tables and things?
When was that? It was well before Cleopatra in Space.
Yeah.
I've been going to conventions ever since I got into comics. But what's really great, my Another cow and buffalo. Everybody misses cow and buffalo. I'll try to get at least one. You know, what's funny with the cow and buffalo is the Backbone Supergirl comics I started doing later on are essentially the same formula of cow and buffalo. It's just Backbone Supergirl instead of cow and buffalo. It's the exact same format, same sort of banter going back and forth. It's just a little different. So that's kind of, I can see why people may like cow and buffalo. Anyway, so yeah, I've been going to conventions forever. I didn't, you know, I used to go just to go get signatures, you know, from comic creators and things. My dad, who just loves sports, would still, he would take me to comic conventions even though he had no idea why I like these things and stuff, which is pretty great. And so I've been going, I went for so long that I started, you know, I was telling you how I had my little mini comics that I would sell at, you know, not sell, but have at the tables. I would actually go around to tables with my own comics and say, hey, do you want this? To like creators. And
I'll trade you.
But then I would say like, it would be like, I don't know, $5 or something, you know, I give them a price and say, this is $1. You have to give me $1 for it. And it was really great when a creator, because I mean, I was just a kid, but it's like, oh, sure, I'll give you $1 for this, but you know, it sounds, you know, sort of embarrassing to say, but that really gave me the confidence, like, oh, maybe if I had my own table here, I could actually do this. And so it was shortly, I think my first convention was right after I had enough cow and buffalo strips that I had put together a book full of them. And I didn't even go like the stapling route. I like found a publisher in Canada and had it professionally bound and all this stuff.
Wow.
The first convention I went to was or that I tabled at, if I remember correctly, it was a MegaCon in Orlando. And I had, you know, a car, you know, stand-ups. I had my friends there. My wife was there, and that was, I mean, I can't remember the year. I mean, maybe it was like 05, 06, maybe somewhere around there. And then it was so much fun just chatting with everybody. I think I spent most of the time walking around. I wasn't even at my table. I was like, oh, this is great. I can buy books. I don't have to carry them around. I can just take them right back to my table and not have to put them in a giant heavy book bag. I think that was my favorite part about tabling that first year.
You had a home base.
Yeah, home base. Yeah, that was the best. That was the best thing. I wasn't really too concerned, I think, how much money I made or anything like that.
Did it take a couple of times that when the wife started going, so when are you going to make some money?
Well, I found when I wasn't at my table and she was at my table, I would sell more books. And so I felt, and so that you know, it worked out because I didn't have to be there, and she's a much better salesperson than I am.
That's one really interesting part of all of this is that a lot of us comic book artists have some part of their young story tabling, right? And you know, you kind of figure out what is your selling apparatus, like, you know, are you kind of like a huckster? Are you drawing sketches and never look up to see? You know what I mean? Like, what's your energy at a table?
I try to be mostly just personable. Greet people as they come by, make eye contact. You know, if they ask questions, I'm not the type that's just going to start, you know, really trying to sell myself. I worked as a telemarketer for a good couple of years while I was in college, and I just never really want to return to that period of my life. I can't stand selling stuff, and I still have a hard time, even on social media. I really do not plug myself as much as I probably should or could be doing. Mostly probably to my detriment, but I just don't. I just don't like. I don't know. I just don't like talking about my work. I want people to sort of discover it on their own.
Yeah, I think that's part of. There's some people that are entertainers, and what we're doing is entertaining. But most of our time, especially at a convention, you know, most of your life is not at all like a convention where you get up and you're used to like saying, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, oh, can I show you what I, you know?" that's like a thing. That's like a learned thing. And what's interesting to me is that you guys started going to conventions, taking your little, here's my cupcakes, and people are going to come by and like, oh, you like chocolate cupcakes? Right. I never had a table until after I was in the business, until after I was already working at Marvel in DC.
Yeah.
I would go to shows, but I never had my own table until after I was already in the business. So it's like my experience in that way is very different, because I was like on the other side of the table trying to get work at a show, and then I was in the business, right? There was no transitional, because there was no.
You came in a different door,
right? And there was no real self-publishing. There was no internet, so I couldn't do any web comics or anything like that. And it's interesting because I had 2 sets of samples the year I got work. I had my mainstream, Batman samples, and then I had this cartoony stuff called Trax Rover that everybody loved. They didn't love the Batman stuff, and it was actually the other thing that ended up leading me to get work. So it's, but again, I was going around and I had like stapled copies that I would give to everybody. So I think that shows you how much by the late 80s, early 90s, the business really changed so that small press people could actually start. And then you guys were coming in, like when the internet was sort of coming in.
Yeah.
We've talked to a lot of a lot of people that did web stuff. And it's also a lot of people we've had on the podcast like comic strips. They were comic strip people.
Yeah.
And there seems like there's 2 camps. It's like there's the people that like the Stooges, and then there's the people that like the Marx Brothers. There's like people who like comic strips, and they tended to go into the self-publishing track. And then there's the people who like, Captain America, and then they went in to working for Marvel in DC. There's a little crossover, but it's just something I noticed that. So were you never interested in like drawing Spider-Man or I don't know what, Ambush Bug or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I mostly read Marvel comics growing up. Some of my earliest introductions with like the X-Men and Infinity Gauntlet, and so I love Marvel comics. Like I absolutely adore Marvel comics. But it's funny, I never had an interest in drawing. I think part of it is because there was such a style back in the 90s that just wasn't the way that I drew, and what I wasn't interested in drawing like. I kind of still, as much as I loved reading superhero books, I still like drawing in that comic strip sort of newspaper style. And honestly, it wasn't until I discovered Jeff Smith's Bone, which was this sort of mesh between those 2 things, which was that sort of, that 20-page long form sequential storytelling, but with more of that sort of, sort of that animated look to it.
And he was getting a lot of press and a lot of positive press.
Right.
A lot of positive
That's where I thought maybe this is something I can do. Maybe I can make long form comics because I like this. I like what he's doing here. And also like you said, Mike, he was successful at it too, so that was encouraging.
Right.
It's like, well, not only is he doing this, but he's actually doing very well at it, which made it feel like it was a viable career.
Well, Mike, let me ask you a couple more questions in this vein, because we're talking about your entry point, and you were set up at early shows with a kind of like a collected trade of your strips. So even then, it sounds like you weren't trying to get into comics.
Yeah.
Right.
It's funny. I always wanted to make comics. I always wanted to make comics my career. I always wanted to sort of make. It wasn't so much that it's like I just want to be in comics, but I liked making comics. I didn't really want to do anything else. And so if I can make comics my career, then that's what I would be doing all day long. Be careful what you wish for. But so I just sort of kept working to the point where I could, my personal work was at least, I don't know, I don't want to say popular enough, but would make enough for me that I could do that, where I could kind of break out of whatever, anything else I was working on and focus mostly on that. And I never thought I would focus really just purely on comics. I always thought I could still work at home and do like some other freelance things. But comics would be like that main 75% of my career. But I don't know, now it's like 100% of my career, which is really weird to think about.
So during those early periods, were you still trying to find yourself? Like, were you just doing anything art related? Were you focusing solely on doing strips? Were you doing design work on the side and answering internet, like digital webbing ads and stuff like that?
I worked for about 6 years. Right out of college, I worked, and this was right about the turn of the century, just to give some time frame. I moved down to Florida. I went to an art school up in Ohio, and then about 2001, I moved down to Florida. And my family was here, and that's what kind of brought me down here to take a couple of electoral classes and stuff. But I did custom framing for a while, which I really loved. I loved custom framing. There was something about I got to design, what kind of went around artwork. I got to look at a lot of artwork. And that's the only thing I'll probably ever brag about. I was really good at custom framing. It's the only thing I'll ever brag about. I would never brag about anything else that I do. But that I was really good. And I still have a ton of stuff that are framed around my house that when I used to work there. So I did that for about 6 years. But it was one of the nice things about that job is it was kind of a retail environment. And I would be great if my old boss is here. But at night, when nobody was coming in to the place, I was able to sit there and draw. And I love jobs where I could do that. Where I could just kind of sit there and be creative. And I started, I think, that's when the flight anthology started taking off and the flight forums started happening. And I was, you had the drawing board and stuff like that. So it's sort of more of an incentive to just sort of draw because there was like people to share it with. And get feedback from it. And then also not only that, like see other people's art, not just stuff that's in comics or being published by Marvel and DC or, even Dark Horse, but just straight, all over the world, inspiring you to create, anything. Like, look what they're doing. I've never seen anything like that before. That's new. And so you were just, being bombarded by all this creative input, and it was almost impossible not to draw. It's like you had to draw because otherwise you would just explode. You had to get these creative this output out of you. And so I would sit there and I would draw, and I started my own anthology called Parable with some artists, and that kind of got me focused on making some more comics. And I got involved into one of those online drawing forums called Drawer Geeks, where every couple of weeks somebody would give a subject and you would draw something from that subject. So that was even more incentive. Like being forced to draw something that might, like, if I've never drawn the Incredible Hulk before, someone needs a subject. What's my take on the Incredible Hulk? And that was always fun too. And then to see everybody else's take on that sort of thing. So that's what sort of drove me at the time to keep drawing and keep creating, was just sort of wanting to be part of that world, part of that, that sort of that it feels smaller than it does, back in the day than it does now. Social media didn't really exist. There was just these little pockets on forums and stuff. But we all sort of fed off of each other. It was
especially places like the drawing board, because I used to be part of that.
They'll shade lines for it, right?
And you had a real mix of amateurs and professionals. That's where I met Cheeks. They used to Sean Galloway. There was a lot of people. Jose Agrita, so I met him on there. There was a lot of really great people on there, but unfortunately, there's always that tipping point where like there's that perfect balance, and then everybody glums on, and then it's like, oh, it has to go over to the.
Mhm.
We always ruin everything, don't we?
Yeah, and then I think
It's humans.
I think the other thing was that was also at the time, like if you weren't like up on, I think we mentioned this last week or week before. You know, a lot of guys who lost their name.com because they did not stay up with the registration, and it ran out, and was like, oh shit, I went to my website today, and it's like a porno site now because that company. Yeah.
Wow. I'm
Right.
thankful I have like an odd last name so that
Right.
Well,
or even I know especially about the salad days where you might not have had enough money to pay your domain fee that month. And you're just like, I don't have $40 to pay this right now.
well, also people would get slammed because you were on a server which gave you a certain amount of bandwidth.
No, right. I remember
And if
that.
you got really popular, like Shane's site got really popular, you couldn't afford to pay whatever the hundreds of dollars because bandwidth was expensive then. It's like nothing now, right? It's like RAM for your computer, right? The first computer I got, I think 32 megs of RAM, and they're like, "Why are you going to the moon? What's going on there?" And like now,
pull up for a phone.
yeah, you can't even load all your apps, But there was a time that. So did you? Since you were coming up in that era, were you aware of also that business side of it too? Because some people seem to be like totally creative and focused on the art, but then they have a friend or a partner who's good at the business part.
Oh, I wish I did. I wish I had a friend or partner that was good at the business part. I'd probably be further along, but no, I mean, I think I just got lucky with the, I found a hosting site pretty early on, and I remember them running a special where you get like unlimited space, unlimited bandwidth, and I just like jumped on it, right away. I was like, yeah, it sounds. I was always thinking ahead. I was like, well, I don't need this now, but I might need it later. Is it worth? If I would always put upfront money if I thought it would save me later on. I still do that. I always put a little bit more if I think it's going to save me in the long run. So I think I've always been a little bit more of a, I don't know, what's the word for that? Prognotic.
You're the grasshopper, or you're the grasshopper, or are you the ant?
Yeah, I'm always trying to think ahead.
A prognosticator.
But I mean, it could totally backfire on me too. I think I just got luckier with that. But no, I mean, I've never been great at business. I've just tried to just pretty much stay professional. The school I went to for art school was pretty tough. It was Columbus College of Art and Design. And the first year, I mean, none of us had a life because the homework load was so high. There was no time to do anything. And it was a very strict curriculum. And so I always joke, they sort of clockwork oranged us until like, if we're not working, we're doing, if you need to be working, and you're doing something wrong. And it sort of unfortunately carried me through my career, that I never, I won't miss a deadline. I'll make sure that, my rates are reasonable, things like that. And I think as long as as long as people can't just do those simple things, they shouldn't be in too much trouble, making a career out of something they like to do. But really, it's just about, being a decent person. I think it's kind of the core of it. Just try to be nice.
Well, go ahead, Mike. You go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, at the same time you were doing that, so you were in the school in Ohio. Was that a fine art school or a commercial art school?
That was a fine art school. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I majored in illustration, and at the time, I think there's only like 5 majors. You could do like fine arts, illustration, media studies, which was like video and photography. They kind of rolled into one. I think animation went into media studies too. Industrial design, and then I don't know. Something
Printmaking?
Fashion. I think fashion was
fashion. Okay.
Yeah, fashion. And so I originally really wanted to go into traditional animation, right? Out of high school. That's what I thought I would do as sort of a track towards comic. I thought it would help me in drawing comics to draw traditional animation. But it was the turn of the century. That was like Toy Story had come out a few years ago, and then that just market they've just every studio just stopped making traditional animated films. It was all going to CGI, and I didn't really have any interest in that at the time. And so I just kind of, I did a lot of animation work in school along with my illustration, but then I just sort of didn't go into animation. I just kind of decided to make go straight into trying to make a job doing comics and doing some side jobs along with that.
Did you look at like Cal Arts or the other Sheridan or any of the other schools that did animation?
No, part of it, well, for one thing, the school I went to was super expensive. I only recently, over like the past, maybe about 4 years ago, paid off. And my wife went to the same school. We paid off our loans for that school. So it's just trying to fund, just trying to fund that to go to do more classes. We couldn't afford that,
I mean, instead of going to the school in Ohio, did you apply?
Oh, no. I have family in Ohio. I have family in Cleveland. I like the environment. I went to the school and it just seemed like a good mix of both illustration and animation, which is what I really wanted to focus on. I didn't want to do just the animation. I also wanted to really focus on a lot of things like, anatomy and color. And a lot of those fine art skills that you kind of get from going to a fine art school, which I'm glad I got. I think it really helped me later on. But yeah, I went to I looked at Sarasota, I looked at Ringling, and this was the school that I just thought was the best fit for me. And I'm glad I went there. I liked it. Again, I met my wife there, so that would have been
that worked out right. That was worth. There you go. Worth the price of tuition.
Yeah.
Mike, let me ask a question. I keep saying Mike. You know who I'm talking to. I'm like somebody's bad mother.
I don't know who you're talking to.
You know which one of you broke the lamp. You know who I'm talking to. There's a question, kind of a starting out question. One of our lifers here on Pencil to Pencil, eternity forever. And it was great hearing Rod Fred say, eternity forever. For everybody in the room, how do you know what to charge when you're just starting out? How do you figure out your rate? This is like an eternal question. Yeah,
that's a really good question. Usually, the way I would used to do it, and I would always, at first, I'll be honest with you, I would always undercharge because I was too afraid to charge too much. And you learn later on that you can kind of go a little higher than you think. But I would look at the job that was presented to me, whether it was a design job. I did a lot of like logos, at first, like logo designing and things like that. And I go, well, how much time do I think, based on what I've done before, how much time do I think this is going to do? And then how much do I want to make per hour based on that? And then I would just kind of charge a little bit more than that because chances are it's going to take me longer than what I think it's going to be, either with changes coming back and forth. And it took me some time to figure that out too. To go, well, this client wants this and this and this. And so then you go, well, you only get this many changes and this is that. But there's no flat rate. I can't tell you this is how much you should charge. That's only something you can tell yourself based on what you think you are worth, what you think your work is worth. And that could be anywhere from, $100 to $1,000 to even more based on what the job is. But I will say I constantly undercharged myself starting out. I definitely could have charged more. And if they go, no, it's too much, then you have to be comfortable with, I wasn't going to do lower than that. I didn't need the job that bad. So you have to do amount that you're comfortable losing, but you want to make. That's going to have to be your decision on what you think that is. But I will say, just you're worth more than you think you are. Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah. I always say that when your toilet is backing up to your house and the plumber shows up and goes, it's $100 to show up, and $150 an hour. Nobody goes, what? How dare you? Everybody goes, honey, where's the checkbook? But I think there is no, like you said, there's no one answer, because sometimes a client will come to you and go, here's a logo and I'm going to spend $150, and then you decide yes or no. Sometimes you get a job and they say, early in my career, I did a lot of coloring books or activity books, and they would say it's X amount of pages and it's, $3,500 or $4,800. And we go, okay. Or Marvel and DC would tell you, this is what your starting page rate is. But I would say that in general, you should figure $30 to $40 an hour as a professional, as a basic baseline, right? Now, if you're inefficient and it takes you longer, well, then, you've got to eat that. But yeah, I think that I have come to, especially in today's world too, because again, the Pangea I came from does not exist anymore. All those ways that I worked with people, and and the way things were delivered, you would like physically deliver a piece of art. I remember my worst case was I was up for like over 2 days in a row for no sleep to finish a job. And then I had to go get on the train in Philly and take it up on a Saturday morning to deliver it to the art director's house, who was also, it's funny because that art director for that project was the wife of my then girlfriend's agent. So I was helping her finish that job, got on the train, went up to New York, just completely blotto, and had to physically deliver the boards to this person's house, right? Now you would like scan it and you would send it, right? So there was all this other stuff that was built into the price that we have now absorbed, but we no longer, but we're not compensated for it, right? We're not. That's just something that's like when you deliver in the old days, if you had been doing this in 1985, you would have taken all 150 pages in a box, and gone up to New York City and go, oh, here you go, right? Yeah, and there would have been like overlays and people making corrections and all kinds of stuff, and then you would get a proof, and the proof would be like overlays on film that would not necessarily match exactly the color of the final image, right? Because the film would be different, right, than actual printed paper. There's all these things that went into the process back in the day that you don't no longer deal with, yet you have to absorb the cost of technology, absorb the cost of high-speed internet, absorb the cost of all these computer programs. So I say $30 to $40 an hour for anyone who's starting. If you can get it higher than that, great. If you can get it $100 an hour like a lawyer, get it. You know what I mean? I think it's you always ask for it, and if they say no, that's the thing that's bad for young artists, because I get that question all the time. Nobody knows what to ask. Oh, I just got this job offer. What should I tell them? I get that question all the time.
Right.
And if it's animation, I know the union base is $30 to $40 an hour. It was in 1996. It's pretty much still the same as it is today. But at least okay, I know there's like a base there. But if you can get more, ask for more. All they can do is say no. And everyone's always afraid that if they say how much and you say, I want $150, $150, they're going to like quit. And I don't think very many, they might say it's too much. Then you say, what can you afford?
So let me jump in on this real quick. So I think also a big thing with young artists is learning to listen to your gut, right? Because that's where the fear and the question comes from. I don't know what to say. What do I say to this person? Because if I say the wrong thing, it's over. It's kind of like it's like shooting the half court shot. It's either it's going to go in or it isn't. right? And I've said to a lot of young people, like, when you get that question and your stomach starts turning, what is the answer in your head? Whatever that is, double it.
Yeah. That's the best answer right there. Just whatever it is, double it.
Yeah.
Your worth is always. I feel like we always do that. I mean, I still do that. I think undervalue
Sure.
my own work, especially when I'm putting up like original art and stuff like that. I'm like, it's long and it's gone immediately, and I'm like.
So, well, Mike, and Eternity, that was a great question, but I want to get to Cleopatra. Maihak, we've been on an hour and we haven't even got to Cleo yet.
Well, we're sort of building. I guess we were sort of building up. Yeah.
So tell us about, like, what is that marshmallow center of your career between Cow and Buffalo and Cleopatra?
Oh, that's nice. I like that marshmallow center.
You like that?
Nice, sweet little chewy spot.
Yeah.
Let's think. Well, I was doing Count Buffalo. It was really, I talked briefly about, Drawer Geeks. It was that online platform where I would draw, a subject every couple of weeks. One of those weeks was Cleopatra. And the first drawing I ever drew of Cleopatra was for that site. I know this was 2007 because I've had to share the drawings so often, and I always date my signature. So this was 2007, and I drew her in space. I drew Cleopatra. I gave her like a spacesuit and a floating cat and a bubble helmet. I put Cleopatra in space, many A's, because that's how I thought you should say space.
Right, space. Yes.
At the front of it. That was that. That was fun. This is after the framing job. I was working at a university, and man, that job was the best for me, being able to just draw my own stuff when I wanted to. I just had my own desk, I had my own computer, had a scanner right there, and I would just everybody go home and I would draw at work. I don't work there anymore, so I can say that freely. But yeah.
Well, did you work in like, what department were you in? Were you in housing or something?
I worked in a department where I was. What was it called? Industrial education, I think that was the name of it. But we would do like websites. It was a college courses, but I would design stuff that would go into these college courses. Which was mostly a lot of copy paste work. It was pretty simple and pretty you just kind of easily, quickly do it. So I didn't do much more than about 2 hours worth of work. And I would spend a lot of time just kind of working on my own stuff, which is, no, you shouldn't do that. I don't want to give that advice. It's bad advice.
It's too late, bro.
Go to McDonald's, get a job at McDonald's.
It shouldn't have. It should not, ethically, that should not have worked out at all.
Get your job at McDonald's, go into the manager's office right away, sit there, draw, use their internet.
I remember that day before it was due, it was like that Friday, I drew that Cleopatra. I drew it one day, colored it that morning, and sent it off. And there was a lot of great feedback on it. Really, I had a lot of my pals. This is back when we had AOL Instant Messenger. Yeah, they messaged me and oh, that's brilliant. You gotta do something more with this Cleopatra in space. I was like, okay. I mean, I still drawing, but then I kept sketching her. I kept kind of drawing her in sketchbooks, kind of refining the character. I started thinking about, like, if I was to do this, like, what would it be? And I started doing research on Cleopatra. I learned that she was, I didn't know anything about Cleopatra when I drew the picture. So she's very, like, kind of Egyptian looking. And then I was like, oh, she wasn't even really Egyptian. She was Greek. And so I had to kind of change her up a little bit based on that. And just sort of kind of figuring out what she was. And I sort of made her more of a teenager, and because I always thought it was more fun to write stories about teenagers. And eventually I just started working on this sort of black and white webcomic for her, just while I was still working on Cow and Buffalo, just for fun. I thought, maybe I'll do like a 20-page. I mean, Count Buffalo isn't really, it's not really challenging me anymore artistically. I'm drawing a bunch of dot eyes and hoofs for hands. It'd be nice to do something a little bit that's going to really challenge me and make me a better artist. So let me just try do something that's sort of influenced by things I grew up loving, like Star Trek and Buck Rogers and Star Wars, and sort of mesh this Cleopatra character into that. And I started working on this comic. I put it up on the web about a page a week until I had enough where I could put a little book together, just like the Cow and Buffalo stuff. And that's where it really sort of kind of spawned. When I started the comic, I didn't even know what the story was. It wasn't until she was like battling her way through the space station. And it wasn't until I was talking with my wife one night about, I got her in this, and got Cleopatra in the space station, and I need to get her out. I need to give her some sort of spaceship, some sort of like, I want to give her like a bike, like Lobo's bike. I was thinking Lobo in my head, like let's go around space. That's how far away from being a middle school graphic novel it was still. But I want to give her some sort of space bike, and my wife was like, "Oh, it should be a sphinx." I was like, "That's brilliant." And then suddenly I was like, "Oh, it's not just Cleopatra in space; it's Egypt in space." And so that's when suddenly the stories started coming in. I started doing all sort of started getting books out of the library about Egypt and looking at sort of the architecture and the design elements and things, and sort of meshing that into the story. And that's where the story kind of came together. I just sort of, by doing that research, I started figuring out, well, this is Cleopatra's arc. This is what she's here for. This is what she needs to do. And I just kind of kept doing that on the web until I had 2 books out. I was at San Diego. Here we're getting into the marshmallow. Here's the marshmallow. At San Diego Comic-Con. And I had somebody I was set up in, not even in the Artist Alley section. I was set up in the small press section. The small press section, because I would always have my books sort of bound and like these books that just felt, and the tables are only like a little bit more, so I thought that was a good place. But
and I'm sure your profile changes.
I say that because I always wish I didn't really know about Artist Alley. I never went to. I went to San Diego. I went once before I started tabling there, and then I discovered I was like, everybody I know is an Artist Alley. I wish I was an Artist Alley, and I've never done Artist Alley. So if I ever go back, that's probably where I would be. But regardless, I was in small press, and somebody from Scholastic Book Fairs came by and saw the 2 volumes of Cleopatra in Space that I had, picked them up and said, I think these will be great for Scholastic, and they're looking for graphic novels. And I'm kind of at this point, I've done enough conventions where I'm used to people coming up to my table and saying, "Oh, I do this, and I do this."
Right.
Nothing ever develops from it.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, that's cool. That's great. That'd be $10."
Right. You're not giving it away for free. These are, I'm not copping you.
He bought them, and and the convention wraps up, and I head back to Florida, and the very next week I get a call from David Saylor, who was he's the head of graphics over there at Scholastic, and said, Ed showed me your books. I think this would be a great fit. Do you have a story in mind if you were to make this into a graphic novel? And at this point, I was already thinking, I was going all the way back to when I was talking about Seed and creating this magnum opus that I was doing once a week. I was doing it all over again. I was like, I do have a story, and a graphic novel would be perfect because then I could actually tell this story in the way it was intended. And that was that's what happened.
And what year was that?
That was 2010, 11, 2010 or 2010. That was 2010 because the very next year my son was my eldest son was born, 2011. I could be wrong. 2010 or 11, but yeah, it was 2010, I believe.
And then when was the first Scholastic volume out?
And the first Scholastic volume came out in 2014. I had it finished in 2012, though.
Okay. So why don't you talk, because I've seen this subject going around a lot on Twitter. you probably have too, where people sign a deal, they get X amount of money based upon, you delivered in stages, and then you've got to budget it out so that you can, you
Yeah.
can eat the dollar menu,
Yep.
until you're done, and then you get the big final check. So I know a lot of people think like, oh, once you like sign the Olympian contract, ding, like dollars start, falling from
Like
the ceiling.
Ariel and the Little Mermaid.
Yeah. So why don't you, and then you have to, how do you, because once you sign, you've got to deliver certain things at certain key dates. How do you budget? How do you do all that? Because that's a new thing now, right?
Yeah. I was, I talked about a little before about thinking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point I've been doing lots of conventions, and with Cow and Buffalo, and doing a lot of freelance and logo designs and all sorts of stuff. Anything I wasn't making from my full-time job, working as either a custom framer or a graphic designer, went to a savings.
Mm-hmm.
That savings was intended for me to eventually do freelance full-time. So once that savings got to a point where I was making a salary that was equivalent to what I was making at my day job, I was like, that's the point. And I always feel like I had clients come in. That was the point where I was going to leave. Already, I was planning on already leaving the university I was working at. And so that amount was already pretty high. So I had good savings. So I always recommend, it's good. That's your buffer. It's always good to have a good kind of savings, because your advance is not going to cover working on a graphic novel. You're going to need more than that. Especially now, at the time, the advances were 50-50, and now most publishers are splitting those either into 3s and 4s. And so your advances are even smaller than used to be, depending on the stages that you're sending your graphic novels. It's changed a lot, even in 6 years,
Yeah.
So I had that. So that was that helped. But then you also got to look at, wow, you really had to plan it out. I have to get this many pages done here. I got to get many, and I literally just went to a calendar and I just looked at what they wanted for an expectation of a date. And you as an artist too, I want to say this: the publisher doesn't tell you this is the date you have it. They ask you, where do you feel you're comfortable handing in something, and so you have to really be. You have to look at yourself, and again, I would say give yourself that buffer. So I did. I was like, well, I can do this. I can get this much done. I was also thinking I can get some of this done while I'm still at my job, because I talked about earlier. In fact, my proposal, my pitch package, they didn't just go. Scholastic didn't just go, oh yeah, we'll make a graphic novel. I still had to present a proposal for it. This is the story. Here's 20 sample pages of what it would be. Here's my goals for it. I still had to do that work, which took some time to develop.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once everything of that was finalized, I just kind of charted it out on a calendar, and I budgeted my time and tried to make it work. You make your sacrifices where you have to make them.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Somewhere else on that.
Yeah. So when you did you signed in 10,
yeah,
and was out in 14. So there was 3 or 4 years before your first book was out.
Well, let's see. I signed. No, they contacted me in 2010. It took me till the spring of 2011 to get a proposal put together for them.
Oh, okay.
So 11 is where and it was around springtime. I remember, because I sent directly to Scholastic. I didn't even have an agent at the time. I looked into getting an agent, and then she was just kind of busy at the time, so I just sent straight to Scholastic, and they got back to me pretty quickly about a month later. So it's 2011, and then I stayed at my job for another few months while I thumbnailed the entire graphic novel. That's right, I thumbnailed my entire graphic novel at that work. And then I left because I didn't have, that goal I had for my freelance, salary, my year's salary. It wasn't quite there, but I just took the risk. And I think that's part of it too. It is a risk, and it couldn't have panned out. It was a 2-book deal. I'm blessed that I was able to make 6 books. But yeah, it was only a 2-book deal, and it could have just been 2 books. It could have just not been what they were.
And then you have to budget out your living for the what? I'm imagining if it's 2 books, it's probably at least 6 payments, right?
2 books was actually 4 payments. So at the time it was 50.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you got half up and then half when you get to work. And it's been that. It was that way throughout the entire course of working at Cleopatra in Space. But yeah, I did. I don't know how else to say. I just budgeted. I looked at how much money I already had in my bank account, how much they were giving me, and I just sort of looked at my time frame of what was going to take me to finish the book to get my next advance for the 2nd book, and I just chunked that out by month. And it's like, this is how much I make a month now. This is my can I live on this? And if I don't get really not getting the book done on time wasn't even an option for me. I was like, this is what I got to do.
Right.
So no artistic block, no, like all of a sudden I get to page 12 and like, oh my God.
No, artistic block, man. I gotta say, I don't know if I've ever had artistic block.
Yay!
If there's anything, I do something else. I move on to another thing, or I switch gears. But I've got way too much in here to have any sort of block. If anything, it's taken all these ideas, and the hardest part is trying to compress them into something. That's where the struggle comes.
But you must get that question.
Trying to make them into something coherent.
You must get that question, because that's something we get asked all the time. Like, what do you do if you get artistic block?
Yeah. I feel like that's a false for. It's not. If you're a writer, you're a writer. If you're an artist, you're an artist. To say that the block, I feel like that's a term that's kind of come up that just is sort of like a fallacy. It's like that's what you do. So it's like someone saying like, oh yeah, I play baseball, but some days I just can't play baseball. I play basketball, sometimes I just can't do this. I'm a piano player, but sometimes I cannot play piano. Sometimes you get into that point where it's more difficult, But then I think as artists, we're creative people, and so we have to find creative solutions around that. And so we work on something else. We work in a different style, do a different idea. Go for a run, just get out of your computer, get out of your room, change your environment, look at those around you, go someplace, observe people. That's working, just sitting there and and observing. You can't be an artist without observing your surroundings. That's part of your job. I think that's the hardest thing artists have been hit with COVID, is that we're stuck in these rooms. And our output, that's why it's the struggle to get stuff out there is so hard. It's because we don't have as much inspiration as we only have what we're seeing online, and online is just a fire, and so
yes. The endless fire of stupidity.
Do something else. It doesn't have to be drawing, it doesn't have to be writing. Just switch gears, do something else.
I know. I think that's really true. I think that's true. I think people think that the only thing you do as an artist is draw, but you're right. That's only part of what. Well, like the famous artists used to have that saying, see, observe, remember. Everybody sees, but artists observe it. Like you go out to the Starbucks and you see 3 old ladies sitting there talking, and you notice how each one of those old ladies is sitting different. And that is a story in itself, because maybe one's got, a war wound because she was one of those ladies that used to kill the Nazis, and lure them into the woods, and she got a bullet in her hip or something, so she's got and one's actually an alien, your brain can just start running with stuff.
It just starts spiraling, and it's like, this is good. I think the hardest part is like taking those ideas and just trying to make them sort of marketable, it's like, how can I convey this in a way that other people are going to understand as much as how I understand it? I love this idea, but how can I make other people love this? Yeah, go on.
Mayhack, I have a couple of questions. I have some more. I have some contract things from the room, and then I have some just kind of headspace questions.
Okay.
So that moment when you get approached by Scholastic and they're like, "Hey, graphic novels," and around that period of time, graphic novels were still bubbling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't here where we are
it's not
now.
even that long ago. That's the craziest part of it. Yeah.
Right. Was there a part of you that went, well, okay, but what is going to make this deal sweet enough for me to quit my job? Or did you think about doing both of them at the same time?
I did. It was actually, I thought I would be able just to kind of do both because it was scary. It's very, I mean, it's a risk. I think if you don't have, I think if you don't have a little bit of fear,
fear is healthy.
Probably not I don't want to say it's not, but it might not be the best idea. I feel that almost has to be a little bit of fear in there, But yeah, it was scary. I thought maybe I can do both. Maybe I can work on this. I think I had the benefit of attempting that before with Seed and knowing that how mentally and the exhaustion that would take its toll on me. And I talk about my wife a lot. She's my partner. She's there. We're like this, and she's one of the ones that convinced me. It's like, you can't do both. We had a son that was on the way in October, our first baby, and I was like, you know what? She at that point she was doing really well with her career. And I was like, if this doesn't work, we need somebody to be home with the baby anyways. I'm totally happy being that person. I would love to be home. I could draw and stuff like that. So I had that sort of on my in the background. If it doesn't work out, I still feel like I'm doing something for the family. Still want to support the family in some way. Well, and that was the way I was kind of going at it.
Right. Well, the reason I say that is that part of the dream to a lot of people. This is Jamar being the layman because this is one of my roles on the show is that people have this really sexy fan.
My wife.
All right, I'm gonna sneak in here.
You bring me my tea.
I am.
Thank you.
It's hot.
Oh, I got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, bye.
All right. Nice.
One of the
I've got tea.
Nice. One of the fantasies of all this is that a magic contract comes floating into your lap, and then you take off your apron and throw it on the ground and go, "I quit." You throw your push broom down and say, "I quit. I'm going to do comics full time."
Oh, you know what? I always said that the dream is never to make comics full time. The dream is to have as much time as you want to make comics.
Ooh, hold on! I got to ring the bell for that.
Wow!
All right, nice.
Yeah, man, comics take a long time.
Comics take all the time. Comics will take all your time.
There's a lot of compromise, just artistically, a lot of shortcuts that have to be done to make it a viable career.
Yeah.
And man, there's that. Oh, there's Ralph. There's that percentage that have been able to just go, you know what? If I want to spend 5 years working on this thing, I'm going to spend 5 years working on this thing. I was like, that's the dream. That's it.
Yeah. And that's a very rare spot.
Very rare. Yeah. It shouldn't even be a goal. It's so rare. Right. But yeah, actually it should be a goal. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to retract that. It should be a goal. I think goals should be as high as you try to reach that,
Although it seems like you have so many ideas, like you said, that you wouldn't want to take 5 years because you'd want to be doing a couple things within that 5 years.
That's part of it too. I wouldn't. It was rough working after I was done with Cleopatra. I designed Cleopatra in Space, where I could put in a lot of different types of ideas into the story itself. It wasn't just going to be a sci-fi book for me. It was going to be a lot of things. For instance, like book 3 was almost this sort of pseudo 19 30s mafia / Western book. Because I just was really inspired by things like The Untouchables, but also like Silverado and things like that. And then I really want to do sort of this book that starts off in like one environment and like just halfway through switches to something else, completely like a side B of a record.
Mm-hmm.
And that was book 4. You know, I kind of designed that in that respect of I want to do this sort of thing that kind of develops into this. And so I had, even though it was still the same story, I had this filter that could get a lot of those ideas. When I was done with that, suddenly I had the whole world, you know. I was like, what do I start with? And my biggest struggle at the beginning was just boiling that down to an essence, you know?
Yeah.
Because at first it was a mess. I was just like, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do, and it was just, I threw it all on the page. And I just looked at it, and, you know, it looks like a Jackson Pollock painting, you know. And I was just like, all right, we gotta organize this a little bit and feel what's important and what are the themes that I want to tell. When people are put down this book, what do I want them to take away? How is this going to better the world? How is this going to better their life? And so, so those are the things that are always at the forefront of my mind. But yeah, you're right. It's like there's too many ideas. I don't have time to sit there and spend, you know, the rest of my life just doing one thing. I want to do a lot of things.
Well, see, you're not that type of person, because there's some people that like they would just do like Charles Schultz did Peanuts for 50 years, right?
Yeah.
There's some people that's just their thing, but you're obviously a guy who has other ideas. You know, you're not. You don't.
A lot like with those strip style comics, you know, they had certain ideals and themes that carried throughout the entire strips and stuff. And I think that's not going to change either. You know, even though it's going to be like a different type of story or a different type of artwork, those things aren't going to change. You know, I'm still what makes me is going to come out in the stories I tell. And I think some people are comfortable just leaving that with just, you know, a specific character or a specific family. And I think that's great. I think because they can explore and see how those characters grow. I mean, Peanuts didn't start the same. You know, what he started with was completely different by the time he changed. I mean, it didn't even look the same. You know, even his artistic style kind of evolved. So I think to each their own. I don't think there's any. I don't want people to think this is the way you should do it. And it's like, it's not. You know, it's whatever you are most comfortable with.
Okay, I have a couple of publishing questions, and then we'll get into the animation deal. So, Mike, Turnitin asks, what's the most important thing to ask for in a contract with a publisher? And this is a good question because you spoke about how the beginning of your deal was for 2 books, and that extended to a total of 6. Mm-hmm. Can you, not to get into specifics, but maybe to answer Turnitin's question a little bit, from the beginning of your deal to the middle towards the end, what started to change in what you were looking at through the paperwork?
Easiest answer is the first thing I did when Scholastic came to me with at first it wasn't even a contract. It was just, this is the terms of the deal in an email. I looked at it. I was like, first off, I had to kind of shave off the excitement of having, you know, somebody excited about my work. And then the second thing I did is I went and got an agent, a literary agent. And I was like, all right, I don't know contracts. You know, I don't know what the best deals are. I don't know what I should be offered. I don't know what the rates are. I need somebody that knows this stuff. And there's people that do that professionally, and they're called literary agents. And there's a lot of them out there. And first thing I did is I went and got one. And I said, look, I have these books that Scholastic is interested in. Yeah. You want to take a look over my contract? And that was really what I wasn't even trying to hire as an agent. I was like, just take a look at my contract. And then she's like, absolutely, I'll take a look at this because it's a kind of a done deal. And so I let her handle pretty much all of that. And I just trusted that she was going to negotiate
Yeah.
the terms of those offers. And so I try not to even, I don't want to even think about it. I'm too much, I just want to focus on the story and making the best books I possibly can. I don't really think about what the money is. I really don't. I think about it in terms of what I need to get the book done.
Right.
And what I need to support a family. But I don't think about it in terms of this book is worth this much money. You know,
No.
I don't think about it in that way.
And did you have somebody that recommended the agent? Because that's the other question. If somebody says, you should talk to my friend.
Find somebody else that has an agent, ask them who their agent is. Chances are what you do is you pretty much, I went a weird way where I went directly to the publisher they came to me with something that does not usually happen. Don't go my route. Usually what you would do is you would put up a proposal for your comic idea. You know, if you say you want to do a graphic novel, let's say that's what you want to get published out there, you would have a proposal based on like character descriptions, drawings, art, a sample of what that story is, and not even just the first 20 pages, but like the best chunk of pages that represent what your book is about. It could be somewhere in the middle, it could be the very end, whatever it needs to do to sell that to a publisher. What you're trying to do is get somebody interested in it that wants to make money off of it. Not that somebody just wants to read, but somebody that they think they can sell. And so you would put that together and then send that off not to publishers, but find literary agents and ask your friends to, go. There's sites online, there's resources that you can go to. You can just Google search literary agents, find names, and just just send that proposal off to as many as you want, just all of them, and then see who bites. It's like fishing. See who comes back, and usually, the somebody that's interested, you might not get anybody. There's, just keep trying, or rework the story in a way, but usually you might get like 2 back, and then think about who you feel is the best fit in terms of not just who you think is going to make you the most money. You don't want to think that way. You want to think, who's going to support my ideas, and that's where you want to go. Like, who understands about the stories I'm trying to tell? Right. That's it, and then that's the agent you want to stick with. That's
That's super important. That both you and the literary agents share an idea about the future. Like you're basically creating a new relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
Right. And you
remember.
and it's like you have to want to like each other enough that they're going to support you in your work. And this is a question that comes up a lot more often because graphic novels are getting so prevalent these days, and that it's not comic books in the way that like getting a image contract is different from working for HarperCollins. You know what I mean? It's a little bit of a different animal. So the question comes up a lot about literary agents and how do I get one, and do I need one, or or is this agent going to steal my ideas? And there's a lot of people worried about stealing all the time.
I thought I remember that even when I was starting out, there was always so much work, especially with the internet was, really, and putting your artwork up on the internet, everybody's putting watermarks and everything. Yeah. It's always been a concern, and that was never. And I have had my work stolen before.
Sure.
I remember, Cow in Buffalo. My cow character was used for some other country for the logo and advertising for some milk company out somewhere. And
wow.
There's nothing I could do about it. There was other than it would cost me more money to get a lawyer than to just fight.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what they were really saying because I didn't understand the language. But it's, I think you just can't worry about that stuff. If it happens, it happens. I think nowadays, we live at least in a culture and a social construct where people are more accountable for that stuff. They'll call people out, which is great. Like, look, and I think people are less likely.
I
don't know. You see on T-shirts all the time. Still, it's like. People just take work and they put it up. And
You should.
Yeah.
Did you ever get an actual photo of the thing, or did it say like? Did it translate to stolen foreign American icon milk company?
you know, this was even like before, like I think Google was Google Translate around. I don't even know. You know, I don't think I have any information.
Was it Dr. Doom was drinking your milk or something, and he's like,
it was really weird. Yeah, it was just like, and what's funny, it wasn't even like my art. It was like a drawn over, you know.
Oh, they like live trace it in like Illustrator.
They use Streamline. They use Streamline.
At this point, Count Buffalo was a pretty. I mean, it wasn't like it was an unknown property on the web. I mean, it had some.
Yeah, it had some traction.
So, yeah, I think it was one of the readers that pointed it out to me.
Wow.
But yeah, it's happened. I've seen my work stolen countless times, and if it's just somebody, I'll just say like, look, you know, this is my work. You should take it down, and I'm usually pretty friendly about it. But.
Okay. So next up, our good buddy Phil Laura. You could watch our 2-part pencil to pencil with Phil. Says. My kids love Cleopatra in Space, love graphic novels, and have read them many times as they've been growing up. But Phil has a question. Would love to hear about how Cleopatra was developed for TV at DreamWorks.
Absolutely.
So, like, yeah, so fast forward us a little bit. You're kind of at the, well, when did the whole animation thing start to bubble up?
Oh, man, that was like almost immediate.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of scary, actually. Another nice thing about having an agent, if you have a really good agent, is they're not going to just kind of negotiate contracts for you. They're going to look at who wants to develop these properties into other media. A good agent, at least, you know, will do that for me. And first thing my agent did is she had contacts at DreamWorks and other places, and she just put the book out there. And there was somebody at DreamWorks that. Landed on his desk, and he was as far as I can remember, at least from the story, he was immediately attracted to it just based on the title itself, Cleopatra in Space. And he's like, what is this? You know, and I think his daughter really enjoyed the book as well. But it was the first book.
Wow.
It's the very first book. It had barely been out like a couple months. And I was going to, again, back to San Diego Comic-Con to help push it, kind of do some panels about it or something like that. And I had a meeting with DreamWorks. I'm already just like, oh my gosh, I have my first graphic novel. I'm just kind of getting into that world.
Yeah.
Trying to navigate. And it was kind of weird because I had spent so much time trying to figure out how to get into the direct market. And with Scholastic, it was not that at all. It was getting into a completely sort of book market that I had to figure out all over again, and like how things operate and what people want. So even that was challenging. But so I sat this dinner with my agent and some people from DreamWorks, and they were just telling me that we were interested in this for. I don't remember if it was. I think they did say TV. I think my agent was hoping for like a movie deal. She wants movies. Yeah. And I remember thinking how much I would prefer it to be a TV show than a movie. But I was so like taken it. Like I just couldn't really communicate too much, and I was too taken aback by like, how is this?
Is this real?
How is this thing that I created for Jar Geeks, a few years ago? Why am I sitting here talking about TVs and movies about it? This is so surreal.
Yeah.
That I just didn't really process it very properly, and I turned them down. I said, no, I'm just not ready for this. I'm still working on the series. At the time, I was thinking it was going to be 9 books, the way I had planned the story out in my head. And I was like, it's too early. You need to know the whole story to make this. And I'm very much the type that's the story comes first more than the sort of the reward or the revenue or anything. I'm like, the story is the most important thing. So I want the story finished before it was ever even thought about being made into something else. You
have people's eyes are falling out of their heads right now.
Well, I mean, that's how I felt, though.
Yeah.
I was already just happy just having the graphic novel because that was what I wanted. You know,
Right.
that's kind of, I had a career in comics. This is what I had spent a few years trying working towards, and I had kind of done that. So I was already pretty content. I didn't need anything else. But the idea of it being a TV show and being a book that was still being sort of worked on was really kind of enticing to me. And more, I came home and started thinking about it. And I remember calling up my agent. I was like, you know what? I like the idea of it being a TV show. She's like, well, tell me why. You know, I was like, I don't know. I just like. I like the idea that there's this thing that can go on along with the graphic novels that can sort of be its own thing. I mean, when I conceptualized Cleopatra in Space, it was never meant to be just this sort of like concise idea. It was more just a world. And there's so many parts of the story that I just can't get to. I'm focusing just purely on Cleopatra, like Cleo's point of view throughout the story, but there's so much that happens outside of that that would be fun to see explored in a different medium, or even like the stuff I've done explored in a different way. And so we sort of had this long anguishing back and forth with DreamWorks until eventually we just kind of came to a deal. Honestly, I can't go into.
No, we wouldn't ask anyway.
But it took a while for it for things to kind of develop. But really, what it boiled down to was I felt that they understood the property enough, like what I wanted it to be, that they weren't going to utterly destroy it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it came to. I felt like they liked it enough that they were going to do something special with it, something that was beyond what I was capable of doing. I'm just on my own, and wanting to go into animation at the beginning of my career. It was kind of a neat, to kind of see how it
came over.
kind of go in that direction. Even though I didn't, have much a part other than consulting on the series, it was still kind of neat to see how it kind of came to that sort of inevitable conclusion. Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions about the timeline of this, Mike, and we're about to cut the rope on you, so you can go finish.
Yeah, you're right. This did go by fast. I wasn't even looking at the time.
I've never lied. Can you talk about a little bit about the timeline, because you started talking with your people about animation at the beginning of book one, and from what I know, the show is fairly new.
Yeah.
So when did talk about that cushion, that time?
I'd say what I can and cannot talk.
Yeah.
Like I said, I did initially we kind of said no at the very beginning. So there was times that kind of in between that where I'll also say this, even though book one was out, I was almost done with book two at that point because of the schedule. I was always done with the book a good year and a half before it was actually released. So I was already kind of done with book two. I was already thinking about what book three was. And so when they started, I think, going into production, finally going into production on the series, I was either like probably working on book 4 or 5, like tail end of book 4, or right at the beginning stages of book 5 and stuff. So there's a kind of a good timeline, and I did. It took me. It was kind of exponentially, but a year. The first book took me about 12 months to complete. The sixth book, the very last book, took me 2 years to complete. Because I just kept putting more and more into the story and the artwork. And so that if that kind of helps the timeline a little bit, that I was kind of far enough along in the story where I could give them kind of at that point. I was like, I know how this is all going to play out. Here's things you need to stay, focus on that are going to be really important later on, and they had all the spoilers. They had everybody there had all the inner workings of the series. And I even gave him ideas like, if I was to do this all over again, here's the things I would change, And I really liked the idea of, I didn't want it to be just a cut and paste production of the comics. I thought, what's the point? I remember growing up loving the Max comics and not enjoying the animation because the animated was just the comic. I was like, well, I just read this. I don't need this too. I want something new or something different, something else. And that was always in my head. That happened. I don't want to call out any shows, but I love the Hilda series on TV.
Yeah,
and I love the books. My son loves both too. He loves the books. As soon as a new book comes out, immediately reads it. But he got into it with the show and then into the books. And so the books that came out before the show, he's not as into because he already knows what's going to happen because of the show. And so I was like, I don't want that. I want the show to be something that's sort of a companion, something different, whatever it has to be. And so that was one of our earliest talks. And it's funny because I hear so much about it's why they changed it, why is it different? And that's what I wanted. And
and they have to be, each thing has to be its own thing.
Yeah.
Like you can't only, and I think you were right to say you want the episodic thing of TV because then that allows you to expand. If you took all your books and you put 3 books into one movie, there's all this stuff you got to just cut.
Yeah, it would have been over without saying. What I really want to do with the books is I just really wanted to explore more with the school life. I grew up with Star Trek, and my dad was a huge Star Trek fan. I've seen all of it. But one thing we never got our Starfleet Academy TV series, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to see what they were training to go into space and discover space. And so Cleopatra Space was sort of my way of doing that. I wanted to do sort of that school aspect of like, you have to train to go do these things you're going to do. And I was like, but as when I started the graphic novel, I was like, I can't really do that because that's not exciting as a reader for these short sort of 200-page stories. I need to focus and really quickly project Cleopatra to where she needs to be. But a TV show can do this. And I remember early on discussions, I was like, I really would love if you guys, and then I would always say, these are my suggestions. And I was like, you gotta do this, but it's like, I really love if you focus on that school aspect. And so I would, just give them sort of tidbits and things of this is what I would do. And here's a character I never got around to creating and things like that. And it was really fun, the back and forth, and to have somebody come back with something that, wasn't even in my peripheral, that's amazing. I can't believe,
And it looks like you're drawing, which is cool too. It looks like you're drawing, which is cool too, which doesn't always happen.
Oh, the design on that show is incredible. I couldn't be more thrilled with the character designs. The whole crew that they got on that show was just fantastic. From just even the animation, from the designs, it really was everything I could have hoped for. And I think that was the scariest part, is you don't want something that's not going to represent yourself, because even though you don't have any control around it, people are still going to look at that and they're going to,
it's yours.
compare it to the books, compare it to you, and because they're comparing books, compare it to you. And you want something you're proud of, and I want something that I could really be proud to promote along with the books. And I think DreamWorks really delivered on that. I'm really happy with the end result.
Well, maybe one more question about that is, when all of this starts to come together, where I'm sure there was a point where they asked you, Mike, how involved do you want to be in this?
Yeah, I think they did.
And
probably asked me that. I don't think I wanted to be that involved. I was always thinking about what's her name, the author of Mary Poppins. That I just watched that, Mr. Banks. No, I hadn't just watched it, but I was aware of that story and how controlling she was and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I felt like if I was too involved, I was going to stifle the creativity that came out of out of their room.
Wow, that's very selfless of you.
I guess so. I think also, but as a creator, that's how I am too. And,
yeah.
I think about those things, and I've been, as working in freelance, I've worked with people that has to be this way, and you just ruins the end result. And so I didn't want to be somebody that was going to take away from that. I wanted them to kind of let the thing flourish and be what it needed to be, because ultimately that's their thing. In the end, it's not mine anymore. You have to kind of relinquish some control. You have to relinquish it, and I was fine with that. It's honestly pretty easy for me to move on.
Well, that's good.
I was talking to Kazu about that, like just about a month ago, how the hardest thing I have as a creator is like, even though my books are coming out like a year after I've worked on them, or even still like with the cartoon story, I have a hard time talking about my books because I've moved on to other things, and I'm ready to, it's just, I'm not really thinking about it anymore. I'm thinking about this new thing, and I'm thinking about the future. So it's really hard for me to go back and think about the past. So it's actually really easy for me to go, this is yours, but it would be really if they came back and it was just something that was just not at all like I wanted. The themes and the ideas behind it were just completely different.
All right, I want to start wrapping up, and the room's been quiet all night. Now they're throwing all these questions at me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all good. So, Eternitine asks, do you get control over merch and other publications, a la the Turtles?
Do I get control over it? No, I don't have any control over what they create. In fact, those were the TMNT days. Those are gone. I think all these companies learned their lesson from Star Wars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They don't really offer deals like that anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I
like cereal.
Like cereal. Oh, that'd be amazing. Cleos. Oh man. Yeah. But no, I would make a little bit of revenue off of it, but nothing. It would probably buy me like a sub, like a sandwich.
All right, so this is the super lightning round because we're going to get you out of here. Our JRD, the notorious JRD, says, Mike, did you give the production folks your Cleo in Space playlist to help them and get in the proper mindset?
Oh, I did not on purpose, but they found them on their own and used them. In fact, when they first showed me the pitch, because DreamWorks has to create a pitch to sell the networks, I had music from my playlist in it.
That's
and
fantastic.
I actually had the amazing fortune of meeting the composers when they came out to a convention when I was out in Yuma, Arizona. And they talked to me, and they listened to the playlist to kind of get into a mindset, and they're just incredible. They did such a good job with the music and stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, everybody's had a really great time tonight, Mike. One last question from our buddy Tim Fielder. We had a fantastic conversation with Tim a couple of months ago. Tim says, I followed your work from the early work alongside that online comic group, along with Otis Frampton. What's next after Cleo?
What's next after Cleopatra? That's a great question. I talked a little bit about that, I think, earlier, about trying to consolidate some ideas. I have a new graphic novel I'm working on. I'm actually I'm in the last third of laying the thing out. So I'm pretty far along in it. I have a publisher. Nothing's been announced yet, so I can't really give a title or the publisher. Maybe I can, but they haven't said I could, so I'm not going to. But but I will say, while Cleopatra was sort of inspired by a lot of things like Star Wars and Star Trek, Buck Rogers, and things like that, and the X-Men, it was really inspired. It was super inspired by the X-Men. This new book, there's so many other facets of fandom that I love, and I grew up on like the 80s movies like Goonies, and I love Ghibli, I love Miyazaki, and I want to do a book that was sort of in that vein of discovery, and what that means, and so my new book is much more in the fantasy realm than the science fiction realm, and has to deal with sort of this journey that the characters go on to find this last treasure in a world where treasures no longer exist. And so that's kind of what I've been working on. And I mean, obviously there's a lot more to it, but I'm excited. It's the most I'll be honest, I've never had more fun drawing, telling stories than I have on this book. And I really hope people enjoy reading it.
That's fantastic.
Because I'm really enjoying working on it.
Wow, thank you. Mike Maihak, we've had a fantastic time talking to you. Thank you so much, brother. The room was really lively, and got a lot of really nice compliments saying that we packed this episode to the gills with info. So
no, I never talked long enough, huh?
Oh no, and thank you for being so forthcoming too. Yeah, you know, we never want to spill tea on the show, so you know, I'm glad that you were able to say what you could say. So thank you so much. Mike, where can people follow you online or buy your stuff? What's the best way to get the Mike Maihak experience?
Yeah, I am all over the place. I'm social media. I go on to look at artwork and post stuff, and I do it through comments. And for the most part, I'm most active on Twitter just because it's the easiest platform for me to go and quickly look at stuff. But I'm also on Facebook, Instagram. Patreon is probably the best place to, honestly. I mean, I don't want to make people have to go pay to look at my artwork, but I post stuff there, a good 2 to 4 weeks before anywhere else. And I'm also, if anybody's interested in my newest comic that I'm working at, that's where I'm posting. I'm actually starting to post, just like last month, I started posting concept work from it. What it's about. I'm going to start posting pages, just kind of my process as I work on it. As I go, I'm just going to kind of give an idea of what it's like to work on a graphic novel. To a publisher and stuff.
That's
that's probably the best place. Yeah, the Patreon's probably the best place for any of that stuff. But I heard you talking about TeePublic. I have shirts on TeePublic.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so they've been good. I like their shirts. I used to just because I like their shirts.
Yeah. I have way too many TeePublic shirts.
Yeah.
And you know what? Also, if your eyeballs enjoy really fantastic art, please follow Mike on any of these platforms, as he's always posting really gorgeous sketches of things. So I also really respect your illustration game, Mike. You're always drawing. That's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Let's get him out of here so we can go pee. Guys, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. I hope you got something from the podcast. We had a really nice chat with Mike Maihak. Please follow him on however you can. I hope to have you back, Mike. I think we just scratched the surface. Yeah, we're gonna have to have you back.
We can definitely chat longer for sure.
Yeah. No doubt. So guys, we'll be back here next Wednesday. God willing, with what we're gonna do, Mike, next?
What?
Boot camp. Boot camp. Yeah, we'll be back with another boot camp. And Mike, you should come check it out. You'll enjoy it. So we do a little thing on our way out of here. So just follow along, Mike. This will be fun.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's say your goodbyes. We'll see you. Have a great week. And you know what to do next. Don't forget to wash those Kirby hands. Let's see those hands, Mike. Put them up.
Look at that. Yeah.
There you go. That's a good Kirby hand.
Over here with the Kirby hand.
Oh, that's a good one. Nice. Yeah. Let's go. Let's get it. All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Bye.